Hey Isaac, in this session we will cover the global safety protocols, and before starting out the session we have an alignment space where you can ask your questions and we'll reply to your questions with our answers. Please click on this link so that you can submit your questions and we will answer them as soon as possible. So, I am Ferman Fahim. I am your OGX Audit Manager for Isaac and Austria's ECB seal. I am from Isaac in Pakistan, specifically Isaac in IBA, which is the LC in Pakistan. So in this session, we will cover all of the protocols of Isaac, which ensure the health and safety of all Isaac stakeholders. So these policies and guidelines, which are outlined in this session, they're applicable to all Isaac stakeholders or anyone that is involved in any of the Isaac activities, including members, EPs, OPs. So what are global safety guidelines? Global safety guidelines are basically the standard or the minimum requirements for all Isaac stakeholders involved in any Isaac activity to ensure the safety management and crisis response to protect Isaac from or any stakeholders from any financial, reputational, health, and safety risks. And these safety guidelines, they must be implemented by all full and non-full members of Isaac, and it is applicable for all of the activities which are organized under the name of Isaac. So we will first have a look at Isaac's general responsibility and have a look at sending entity first, which is OGX. So OGX, the sending entity, must ensure that all of the EPs and the members of the entities, they must sign a contract with Isaac's local committee or the member committee before they travel. And this contract must comply with the policies which are stated in the AEPP and APIP of Isaac. The sending entity must also have a clear standard and guideline of identifying the possible destination choices and any restrictions or any regulations. They should have a look at the legalities, which includes the visa process. They should have a look at the blacklist. They should have a look at the external factors, for example, the borders being closed. And they should also have a look at the government statements. And if the sending entity decides not to have such restriction or guidelines, they must clarify and stress on the fact that the responsibility, it is the responsibility of each exchange participant to take their own liability of choosing the destination. And the sending entity is also responsible for providing clear educations to the EP on the destination's safety conditions, which include but not limited to the official status of the political situation of the destination, any post-terrorism incidents or natural disasters, what are the crisis prevention actions, so what do you have to do to avoid any problems, and what is the mindset when you're traveling in that country, and what are the potential diseases and the necessary vaccinations for those diseases. So those were the general responsibilities for the sending entity. Now we have a look at the hosting entity's general responsibilities. So they must ensure, the hosting entity, that all of the participants of any Isaac activities in their country, they must register with the home country. So for example, if someone is coming into Austria from, let's say, Germany, this person from Germany, the exchange participant, they must register with the consulate of Germany if the consulate requires within 1 week, only if the consulate requires it, but this should be done within the 1 week of arrival. And the hosting entity, they must have the contact details of the participant at least 10 weeks before they come to the country. And the hosting entity must ensure that all of the participants of any Isaac activities hosted in their own entity, they agree on the responsibility and the liability condition of Isaac's hosting entity. So for example, what are the responsibilities of the hosting entity? And the EP is agreeing on this, and they should have this agreement in written proofs through, for example, having OP contracts, through NDAs, which are non-disclosure agreements, through having a memorandum of understanding for global laws, and through binding contracts for duties. The hosting entity must also make sure that they have prepared a safety management guideline in case of any seasonal risks such as floods, earthquakes, and lastly, they should also have a complaint system for the EPs or opportunity providers or any other visiting Isaac members where they can submit their complaints and track its solution. Lastly, we have some general responsibilities for both hosting and sending entity. Is that both of these entities, they should have established relations with a lawyer, a peer agency, or any other party which can support Isaac in terms in terms of crisis management, in terms of crisis communication towards both sides of media and sides of the conflict. Now we have a look at the legal documents. Yes, this session is very boring, but extremely important. So under the legal documents, remember that these documents are related to the global safety guidelines and protocols, and there might be other documents which are um, needed to comply with the APIP and the EPP. So please remember that the session is based on the global safety guidelines. So the OGX, they should have a EP contract which must be signed for approval on Expo. For ICX, they should have a opportunity provider contracts, and they should be signed before opening the opportunity or opening the app on Expo. They should have a memorandum of understanding which is to be signed with the host before hosting the entity, and the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, is to be signed before starting the remote exchange. And lastly, for ICX, we have the EP-OP contract, which is a binding contract between the exchange participant and OP, and it should be signed. Lastly, generally for Isaac, we have the acceptance note of the EP, which should be signed automatically on Expo. We also have the indemnity form, which should be signed for any conference of Isaac happens. And lastly, other documents which are based on the reality and laws of the entity. So what are the minimums of EP contract? So basically, these are the requirements that must be present in the EP contract to qualify it as a proper legal EP contract. So there are quite a lot of details that must be included. For example, the EP name, the EP contact details, duration of activity, destination, EP signature. You can read all of these, and there should also be an acknowledgement paragraph. And this paragraph is also applicable for Isaac activities overseas, for example, CED or any international conferences. And very importantly, it should also have any specific clauses which are adopted, which are in according with your national laws. And these should be written with a lawyer. So similarly, we have some minimums of the OP contracts. There are a lot of details that must be included, but also specific clauses that must be adopted to the national laws of Austria, and these are to be written with a lawyer. Now we have the minimums of the MOU, NDA, and EPOP contracts. So MOU, it should include the duration, the responsibilities of Isaac, the host, the EP, towards each other, the minimum conditions of the hosting facility, and the consequences if they do not follow the conditions. The NDA is to be provided by the company or the OP, and the EPOP contract, it should be provided by the OP and defined by the entity's lawyer. And lastly, we have the minimums of the acceptance note, which should be automatically generated on Expo, and the indemnity form and other documents, they should be defined by the entity's lawyer. Now we arrive at the COVID protocol. So in the COVID protocols, we have the following structure. We will look at the operations adoption. We will look at what is health management and how it works. We will look at what is risk management and how it works. And lastly, we will look at EP safety. So because of the current global pandemic, we should follow certain specific regulations, and these are to be followed by all entities that are running exchange under any Isaac program. All of these regulations, they are valid until Isaac's International Congress 2021, IC 2021, and they will be revisited before that to determine whether these protocols are still valid or not. And lastly, the ICB and ECB, the International Control Board, and the Entity Control Board, they will be responsible for overseeing and monitoring whether these guidelines are met and reporting to the global plenary. So looking at operations adoption, basically, each entity's outgoing preparatory seminar, OPS, and incoming preparatory seminar, they should be adopted to the external context. So in some countries, there are a high number of COVID cases. In some countries, there are low number of COVID cases, and there are different government regulations according to that. So each country, each entity, they should have adopted their OPS and IPS according to the conditions in their country. So in IPS, the entities should have explained the health and safety requirements which are aligned or which are in accordance with the country's regulation, and the explanation of the procedures that are to be followed if anything goes wrong. In OPS, the entity should cover the health and safety requirements and regulations for the EP leads. What is the procedure when something goes wrong? and a list of resources which the EPs can access, or the ISAC members or anyone involved in the ISAC activities. They must have a list of resources which they can have a look at to educate themselves, and to see who to contact, and to include and to see what are the recommendations by the international organizations, including World Health Organization. So, as I said in the beginning, all of the entities, their standard operating procedure (SOPs) must be in accordance with the external context, and all of the members which are involved in exchange, they should be educated on the health and safety protocols. And lastly, they should be informed and comply with the health and safety measures which are provided by ISAC if they want to participate on any ISAC exchange. Now we will have a look at what is a health management plan. Well, basically, health management plan is anything that complies with the government regulations, and it provides the safety measures for EPs or any participants of any project or any other stakeholders. And the health management plan, it should include what is the action steps the EP needs to have if they want to participate. For example, they should wear a mask, they also should use a hand sanitizer, they should report any symptoms that arise, and what are the requirements for the host to do if they want to receive before receiving an EP, what the opportunity provider must do if they want to participate in the exchange, and what should be the plan of action if the EP gets infected by coronavirus. Now we will have a look at the risk management. So each entity, they must have a risk management plan, which should be both external and internal. And this risk management plan should include what is the feasibility of the exchange with the main partners, so the sustainability of the exchange, the financial model, and so we also analyze what are the risks for possible situation. For example, if the project is cancelled, for example, if there's any potential second outbreak, or there's a bankruptcy on behalf of the opportunity provider. And what is the plan if the EP is stuck and there is a second lockdown? And lastly, the exchange participants' education plan when they are involved in any exchange operations. We will now have a look at the EP safety. So all of the entities that are using global host, they must have a second accommodation, a plan B, in case the host does not want to participate in the project anymore. And all of the entities which are using global host, they must ensure that the host is educated on the health and safety measures which are required to host the EP. And lastly, the EP contracts, they must be updated with what's happening around, including the refund policies, responsibilities, and safety guidelines, and ISAC responsibilities. And it is important that all of the EPs are traveling under the right visa and for the right duration of the opportunity. And lastly, all of the OP contracts, they should be updated with the current context as well. So that was the session on global safety protocols. Yes, I know, very boring, but very important. Thank you so much for giving me your time. If you have any questions, please, you can either email us on this email, but we recommend you that you put your questions in the link that we provided in the start of this session. Thank you so much, and stay safe, and bye-bye.